Welcome to Recipes from the Morgue, but we're not really in the morgue, we're in my kitchen, and it's not haunted yet, but I do like to call up a few spirits during happy hour. But other than that, conditions are just right for conjuring up a few recipes that are considered Halloween trick-or-treat classics. Feel free to incorporate them into your writing rituals. As horror writers, we have to kill a lot of darlings, and that takes sustenance. So I've got you covered. Let's also remember why we're here, not just to raise the dead culinarily speaking, but also to raise funds for horror writers. I'm Cecilia Kennedy, and I am a horror writer and a member of the Horror Writers Association, and also a freelance editor for Running Wild Press. The segment that I'm doing today is for Halloween in July, which is the Horror Writers Association fundraiser campaign for scholarships for writers, so that writers can attend conferences and workshops and gather all the materials that they need to write their stories. And if you go to the website, you can find out just exactly what the scholarships cover, how much they are, and how to donate. So make sure that you donate today. Today we're going to make popcorn balls, cookies, and a cocktail. All of these things, with the exception of the cocktail, would have been treats that people would pass out to trick-or-treaters back in the day before candy was commercialized. At least that's one theory. According to a Library of Congress blog post by Heather Thomas, The Origins of Halloween Traditions, children didn't receive commercialized wrap candies until about the late or mid 20th century. Before that time, people would pass out cookies, homemade cookies, and perhaps homemade candies, as well as cakes and apples and coins, all of those things that maybe you didn't want to find in the bottom of your trick-or-treat bag were treasures back in the day. So we'll start with the popcorn ball. The Popcorn Board of Chicago, Illinois has an article on their website called History of Popcorn, and they state that the popcorn ball was a popular gift in the beginning of the late 19th century. But is the popcorn ball scary? That's the question I asked the internet, and I got my answer from whatscookingamerica.net, and they cite a tall tale from Nebraska. And according to this legend or tall tale, the popcorn ball just sort of kind of came together on its own, which is a bit creepy. And what happened was, it was a really hot day back in 1874 in July, and you have to imagine this cornfield, and there's this mile-long strip of corn that's getting all the sun. The sun is just beating down on those corn stalks, and the corn starts to pop. And then there's this other strip of weather. So they call this the striped weather incident. So there's this other strip of weather that is, it's just rainy. It is raining, and according to whatscookingamerica.net, the sugarcane fields got drenched. Some people say it's sorghum, but the sugarcane fields, according to this source, got drenched. All the sugar runs out, forms a syrup, becomes a big mess, mixes in with the popcorn. The balls start to form on their own. They're frothing and foaming and looking mean and angry and rolling at people. And it was very scary. And that's what we're going to create today. So the first recipe for popcorn balls was from 1861, E.F. Haskell's Housekeeper's Encyclopedia. You're supposed to boil honey, maple, or other sugar to the grape thread, pop corn, and stick the corn together in balls with the candy. So grape thread, meaning the thread stage on the candy thermometer. So between 230 and 235 degrees Fahrenheit. I found an even easier recipe on food.com. It does not involve a candy thermometer, which is a good thing for me because I usually break them. So this recipe is literally called Easy Popcorn Balls. And it just calls for a quarter of a stick of butter, or actually it's a quarter of a cup of butter. And I decided to cut it into smaller pieces so that it would melt evenly and faster. and a half a cup of white granulated sugar, and an eighth of a cup of just corn syrup, just clear corn syrup. And you're supposed to get it to about a soft boil, which I think it's starting to do here a little bit. I'm gonna give it just a little bit more time, maybe turn up the heat. This is really low heat because I don't wanna scorch it. I don't wanna cause a Nebraska incident of 1874, so at least not in this pot. I don't wanna ruin a nice pan, and I think that it's just about getting to the stage that I want. And I don't want to turn it into caramel just yet. And it should probably be this light blonde color. Maybe just a little bit more for it to come together. Ah, that's looking good. That is looking good about there. All right, so I'm gonna cut the heat, and I'm gonna add just a quarter of a teaspoon of vanilla and get that in there. Make sure it's nice and mixed in. And I will protect my countertop with one of these pot holders that I have here. And I've also already popped some popcorn. This is just microwave. So a bag of microwave popcorn. This recipe calls for an eighth of a teaspoon of salt as well. I omitted it because I figured that the popcorn would already have the salt in it from the microwave bag. I also chose like the plainest popcorn possible. So nothing with lots of flavors or lots of butter, because I wanted to make sure that I got that good caramel mixture in there. If I were to stick my hands directly in here, I'd burn them, but somehow when I get this mixture over here, it starts to just kind of cool down on its own a little bit. And I can start to tentatively form this into balls, or actually mix it a little bit. So it's kind of all poured in one piece. It's gonna get messy. We're gonna have some messes. It's okay. We're in the morgue. So I'm just gonna toss these together. And I think I have some good amount of mixture going through there. Some are just gonna get a little bit more coated than others. You can use actual caramels or marshmallows. I've seen recipes where you use the marshmallows, kind of like the Rice Krispie treat idea. But this one's a little bit more traditional. And then what you're gonna do is just really get in there and start to form those balls. And don't be afraid to press hard. You are at an advantage if you have big hands. You can use your Monster Mash Mite to really put these together. And I don't know if you can hear this, but it's just kind of making a crunching sound. So if you're hearing like the crunching of bones, you're doing it right. All right, so I'm gonna put this in my cauldron shaped, it's a shallow cauldron shaped serving dish. I might try to do one more. And the best part is we get to taste it. Also, you get to make a mess in your kitchen. This one's not gonna come out as good as the other one, but it's the thought that counts. Or you just have some pieces to give for snacking. This one makes it easier to try. And it's so good because it's got that kettle corn flavor where it's a little bit sweet and a little bit salty. And it's just like recreating a little bit of fall right in your kitchen or morgue, wherever you happen to be, in the middle of July. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish wiping off my hands, and we're gonna start on the next project, which is the cookies. The cookies have been hanging out in the refrigerator, just the batter. I already made the batter, and I'm gonna grab that, make sure my stove is off because we don't want to burn down the kitchen. So I have my batter that I already made, my cookie dough, and I'm gonna go ahead and get that ready. And this recipe comes from a 1923 recipe. So it is a classic. And there's this blog that I love that I follow. It's called History in the Making, Recreating Historic Foods and Crafts. And there's a post for Halloween pumpkin cookies. And according to the author, theme parties in the 1920s and 30s were all the rage. So a Halloween themed party wouldn't have been out of the question. And this 1923 recipe comes out of the book, The Children's Party Book. And the dough that I'm making here, or that I've already made, the recipe couldn't be simpler. It's your basic sugar cookie dough recipe. And it's just 3 tablespoons of butter and a half a cup of your kitchen variety granulated white sugar. You cream those 2 ingredients together, add 1 beaten egg, and just a tablespoon of milk. So that's for the wet ingredients. I'm not gonna roll this out too thick because I wanna make sure that I can get it off the countertop. I said my kitchen was not haunted, but these countertops love to eat my cookie dough. I can't get the pieces off of them sometimes. So I'm gonna make sure that doesn't happen. In any case, so for the dry ingredients, you're gonna need 1.5 cups of sifted flour, and then you add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, and you sift that 2 more times together with the flour. And then you add that to your wet ingredients, and you put everything in the refrigerator for about an hour. And this is where you end up. And I'm just making pumpkin patch cookies. And I know this does not look like a lot of cookies, but we're just doing this for demonstration purposes. And I am definitely going to use this leftover dough. We love breakfast cookies in our house. So we might have some of these in the morning. Sometimes we snack on the dough while we're making breakfast. So it serves a lot of purposes. And like I said, this countertop is probably going to try to eat a few of these. And so we're just not going to worry about that one. And this one is coming off nicely though. So that goes there, and I'm going to make sure that we keep some of this dough for breakfast. It will go back into the refrigerator. The oven is already preheated to 375 degrees. The original recipe just calls for a moderate oven, and you're supposed to know what that means. I don't, so I've been told that modern temperatures for a moderate oven would probably be around 375 degrees. So that's what I have here. This goes in for just 7 minutes. And while that's baking, we'll go ahead and make some of the icing that we'll put on top. That can stay in here. We can do the dishes later. We don't have to do them right now. But I do need to clean off my surface so that I can get to the icing. And it's just going to be a quick swipe of flour into the sink. Again, we're not going to worry about cleaning up the messes until later. You clean up after the party, not during it. And the icing is just your simple confectioner's sugar icing. So powdered sugar, confectioner's sugar, and this is just 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons. And 1 tablespoon of orange soda. You don't have to use orange soda, but I love it because it starts to fizz and you can hear it, and it adds to the theatricality of the entire Halloween season and spirit. And we're just gonna go ahead and get that in there. And it's gonna turn, I do smell like the orange from the orange soda. I wish that would stay when I put it on the cookie, but it doesn't. So you really don't need orange soda. You could use just water because the sugar around it is sweet enough. But kids love to hear that fizz and see it. Adults do too. You can see right now that this is turning a really nice peachy color. And for the past few years, the trending color for Halloween was just pastels, pinks and oranges. So if you wanted to stop here and do a trending color for your Halloween cookies, that's fine. I like to deepen the color a little bit with a little extra yellow and a little extra red. Get a really nice pumpkin patch color going. And it's just brilliant. That will be a bright pumpkin. Okay, so that should stand up pretty well. I think it's a little bit on the thin side, but we're not going to worry about it. This one is going to be for the stem. And again, it's 1.5 cups of, or just a half a cup of powdered sugar and 2 tablespoons. I don't think it all came in. Okay, 2 tablespoons extra of powdered sugar, confectioner's sugar. It is being stubborn. And this time I'll just use water. So I'll use about a tablespoon of water. Get that nice and mixed in. And then I will add about a tablespoon or just a drop of green. Make it a nice green stemmy color. That should be all we need. I'll check and see how we're doing on our time. I think what I'm gonna do is switch to a lovely rendition or explanation of some of these parties that would take place. I'll just get a little bit more of this green. It's a little bit more minty, but that's okay. It would go with your pastel colors if you wanted. Minty, frosty green to contrast with the bright orange. All right, so that's it for the icing. Still baking, so we will talk about those parties. There is a 1905 description of planning the ideal party from Mrs. Herbert Linscott's Bright Ideas for Entertaining. All formality must be dispensed with on Halloween. Let the kitchen be the place of meeting and mystery, with the dining room cleared of its usual furniture and decorated suitable for the occasion, reserved for refreshments. The light should be supplied only by jack-o'-lanterns. Browning nuts, popping corn, roasting apples, and toasting marshmallows will add a great deal to the pleasure of the evening. So that sounds like a really nice, lovely party, but some of these party ideas were quite rambunctious, especially if you had a lot of children. There were party ideas and recipes just for boys so that they would stay out of trouble, so that both adults and children would stop egging houses and causing mischief. So there's this other party game called the Dough Test. It's from Mary Blaine's Games for Halloween. It's a book published in 1912. And a lot of the parties at this time had to do with divination, so like foretelling things that will happen, and also probably getting people married off. So this dough test is very interesting. I'm going to start putting out the ingredients for the dough test. It basically consists of writing the names of all of your single friends onto slips of paper. Then you make a dough with just a little bit of flour and water. And then you pinch off pieces of the dough and wrap the slips of paper into each one and then drop it into a bowl of water. And then as the pieces of dough start to unravel, you find the first two that came apart first, and that's the couple that's gonna get married. So I really didn't want to put any of my single friends through that. I decided I would do something different. As a horror writer, or as a writer in general, I have the hardest time finding names for characters or protagonists. So I just went ahead and wrote down random names of things in my kitchen. So there's a Betty Crocker cookbook, there's Crocker and Betty, so I separated the names. We have whiskey, we have sugar, we have spoon and salt. I used permanent markers to write on the slips of paper because what are the hazards? Oh, our cookies are done. They do need to cool a little bit, so I'll make sure that they cool before we frost them, but not too much because we want the icing to stick. They smell so good. I'm gonna make sure that I put the dough away too because we want our breakfast cookies. All right, so you just make this dough with like a little bit of flour, a little bit of water. It's not pretty. It does not have to be fantastic. It just has to be a nice party trick. Let's see how soupy this dough is. Again, we're not gonna worry about being neat. I'm spilling flour everywhere. We'll clean it later. Just maybe a little bit more dough. And that should be good enough for wrapping at least a few slips of paper. And I'll show you how it works. It's kind of, you really do have to be willing to get your hands sticky. I'm gonna turn them upside down so I surprise myself. I don't know which ones are gonna be the name of my next character. So I'm just gonna do a couple of them and lightly wrap them in dough because we do want them to unfurl, so we don't want them to be too tight. And again, I'm not really checking these to see which ones I have. And I'm just gonna drop them in here and give you the idea. Let's see if it works. It worked before. It might not work on camera. Okay, well that was already coming undone. But if you kind of look, they start to unravel and it's like watching sea monkeys grow. And it's kind of a game where people might even clap and race one another to see which one wins. So I think I have in there salt and whiskey. That's going to be the name of my character. My next character in my novel, it will be Salt Whiskey. There it is. Look. Well, let's move this out of the way and get ready for our cookies. They probably need to cool down just a little bit more, but I am not very good at waiting, and I don't learn my lesson. I burn my fingers all the time. We'll take one of these cute little pumpkin cookies. The original recipe called for melting chocolate. So you can also just melt a little bit of chocolate and paint cute little jack-o'-lantern faces on these. Let's get a little bit of this. You can also use your fingers. That's fun. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm just gonna do a spoon and a little bit of the icing on top. And how cute is that? It's so super cute. A little messy, but that's all right. And I'm just gonna take a taste because I can't resist. And it is so good. It is not, it's not gonna win a prize at the fair. It is just the plainest cookie recipe with the sweetness coming from the icing. But it's the type of thing that you remember coming home to. So like you were at the Halloween party all day long at school, eating tons of sugar, and you come home and your mom's made these and you're like, thanks, Mom. You know, more sugar, because what's wrong with that? All right, so the last thing we're doing today is a drink. And I think we deserve one. We've made a lot of things in this kitchen. And this drink is the Corpse Reviver. And the oldest recipe that we know of, we think, comes from 1871 from the Gentleman's Table Guide. And so we're gonna imagine it's 1871 and it has been a day. According to the Gentleman's Table Guide, you need a drink. And we're gonna measure this drink in a wine glass. We're not gonna worry about, fancy bar equipment. It's just gonna take a wine glass. And what you need is a half a glass of brandy. So it is the half glass full mentality. I'm gonna say that's about a half a glass, maybe a little more. Okay, it's been a day. And then we need a half a glass of maraschino liqueur, which smells so good. I think that's a half a glass. Why not? A little more. And then you need just a little bit, a dash or two of something called Dr. Andy's Boker's Bitters. And somebody did revive the recipe, and you can buy this online. But I couldn't get my hands on Dr. Andy's Boker's Bitters, or Dr. Andy for that case, for that matter. He sounds like fun. But I did get cardamom bitters, just a couple dashes. I heard that will do the trick. And then you're supposed to mix it. I'm out of spoons, so I'm just gonna give it a nice swirl. Woo, maybe not too much. Oh, that is strong. I do feel the fumes coming off of this Corpse Reviver. And I'm just gonna take a sip. Woo, it is strong. That is a strong drink. Only stiff drinks allowed in the morgue. So salud, cheers, happy Halloween in July.